Okay, we are continuing on the Florida Seminole Wars Heritage Trail. It's the 10th anniversary of when our booklet was published with the help of the Florida Department of State and the Seminole Wars Foundation. So I'm going over some of the spots in the booklet. If you want a free copy, look in the link or the notes down below. And you can also download it. Printing ones are a little harder to get nowadays, but um, anyway, I was privileged to be a part of that. And I want to talk about the sites in there, and I also want to talk about sites that have been added since then. So I'm going over a lot of historical markers and a lot of historical markers that I drove around finding. I think I drove on some highways that hardly anyone else ever goes down. So you'll probably recognize that when you see the markers. Let's start off then. Okay, our first stop on the tour is this historical marker on near Vernon, Florida. It's Native Americans in the Holmes Valley. It's near Vernon in Washington County. It is on the historical marker database, which I have on the notes, so you can try to find that. This put up with the help of Dale Cox of Two Egg TV. He did a great job putting these up, and there was a chief known as Holmes in the War of 1812 and the First Seminole War who lived in this area. Um, and so we think that's where Holmes County, Florida was at, even though the markers in Washington County, Washington and Holmes County are pretty much considered the same. They're two small counties. This is another historical marker on the First Seminole War. This is in Florida Caverns State Park. If you're driving down to the fishing spot on the Chipola River, this is it right here. I actually photographed both sides and picked the better one for the photo. In fact, this what it looked like yesterday when I went out there and saw it. Just north of Florida Cavern State Park, there's a historical trail called the Bellamy Bridge Heritage Trail, or maybe the Bellamy Bridge Trail. And this is a kiosk they have there at the parking area. It's off I guess, a county road at like the north end of Florida Caverns. I actually found it on Google Maps, Bellamy Bridge Road. But if you get a closer look at the kiosk here, it shows an image of I guess it talks about the battles, I think during the First Seminole War between Econ Chatty and some of the militia in this area. Pretty interesting. Now, the trail's about a half-mile long. It ends at Bellamy Bridge, and then there's this other sign that it looked like it had fallen off where it was mounted on, and it's propped up here, and people are letting their kids climb on it. And come on, respect the sign, folks. Here is Bellamy Bridge, or what remains of it. It's kind of a local, well-known site, and it's also believed to be haunted. There's some ghost stories of the area, and Dale Cox covers them in Two Egg TV on the local lore and history of the area, so I'm not going to go over that. So that is Jackson County, North Jackson County. So let's jump on over to another spot here. This is Chattahoochee Landing along the Apalachicola River. This is a major site that Dale Cox of Two Egg TV has actually developed. You can see some of the interpretive panels and some of the historical markers. There's about a dozen interpretive panels. So you could call this a heritage trail. This is a landing, this in the city of Chattahoochee. On the south side, you just turn down the street next to the Hardee's hamburger restaurant and go down to the river's edge. There's a bridge that goes over this area. This is a very famous area in history, um, and it's where the Apalachicola River forms after the confluence of the Chattahoochee and Flint rivers form into Lake Seminole, and you have the Woodruff Dam. And on the south side, Woodruff Dam is where we are at. Here's, as you enter the park, you may notice a historical marker on the left, Ellicott's Observatory. And there's a little mound here. I tried to get in the photograph. Ellicott was the famous surveyor of the time. And I think it was due to the Treaty of 1795. He was surveying the point between the United States and Spanish Florida, and he'd build these observation mounds. And he had one in this area. Eventually, the Seminoles forced him to stop. Ellicott's also famous for creating the Mason-Dixon line. And so you go down to the boat ramp or the landing. Here's Ellicott's Observatory. In fact, if you look past it, you can see the road that goes down to the river right there. And so there's a mound there, and you'll see these three historical markers that the Chattahoochee Main Street has put up, and really great that they're promoting the local history. In fact, if you go in town, there's a mural on one of the walls. This is an incident that happened. The Seminoles attacking Scott's barge, or going to Fort Scott, is Lieutenant Scott, and Fort Scott is not named after him. Fort Scott is named after uh, Winfield Scott. Lieutenant Scott was not important enough to have a fort named after. So at the mound here, there's some significant parts of history. One is that it was an Aboriginal mound group. There are several mounds in this area, and a few of them remain. There was more on the other side, and they watched the astronomical observances. Uh, this painting on the marker here, that's actually uh, recreated as a diorama in the Museum of Natural History in Gainesville. So there's a historical marker of the mound group, and you can pause them if you want to zoom in and read them, but I'm not going to read them all for you because we got to move on. And the mound was also a British fort done by Edward Nichols, who made a treaty with the Creeks and the Seminoles here in 1814 and had a British fort in this location. And using ground penetrating radar, they determined where it actually was. There's not much left because the thing's been stripped off and built over again, but there was some stoneworks in there. And this is a protected site. It's on the archaeological site file. But this area, Nichols Outpost and Trading Post, it was also the location of the battle with Lieutenant Scott on November 30th, 1817, which is what started the First Seminole War up in full fury. A week before, the soldiers under Major David Twiggs, and that was Lieutenant Colonel Arbuckle, attacked Fowltown under Chief Neamathla, attacked it twice, actually, and burned it to the ground. And a week later, the Seminoles attacked a barge bringing supplies up the Apalachicola River to Fort Scott, which is a mile north of here, which I covered in my last video. And so there's a historical marker for that. And there was about 40 soldiers on there. Six survived, seven women, four children, and one of the women survived. Or her name was Elizabeth Stewart, and I actually showed a house in the last video where she lived. And so here's a kiosk on the First Seminole War, and picture of Chief Neamathlo on it. And some of the other kiosks in the area, this old Spanish Trail. Here's one. This one was actually missing last time I was up there on the shipwrecks in the area. So I told Dale Cox about this. Fortunately, I made a photograph of the marker. Oh, okay. And there's even a recreated mound. This mound originally was destroyed or probably carted away for road fill, so they've actually recreated the mound in this site from, I guess, from the archaeological description they had. Now, down the road, you have the location of the United States Arsenal, known as originally called Mount Vernon Arsenal, but that created some confusion because there's a Mount Vernon Arsenal west of Mobile, Alabama. So they changed this name to the Apalachicola Arsenal. And this historical marker is actually on the back gate. You used to be able to enter this to go to the museum, which made it real convenient, but since COVID, they've kept all the gates locked except the front gate, which makes it pretty inconvenient getting into it. One neat thing about this place is part of the original arsenal. This is the original officers' quarters and administration building here. So this is a house that was originally built in the 1830s, 1834 to 1839. It's also on the list of the top 10 places in Florida that they're trying to preserve. And it's not open to the public, but I've actually been in the basement where it has herringbone patterns of the brick inside the basement of this house, which is pretty neat because I've seen the same brick pattern on the floor in Fort Morgan in the back part of the fort, which is really neat. And so there's the historical marker. This is now the grounds of the state hospital. If you're going there, you have to enter through the main gate and tell them you're going to the Arsenal or the Powder Magazine Museum. And here it is. That you have to take a down the winding road. It's about a mile down the road. Um, it's made of that's original brickwork of the Powder Magazine that was made in the 1830s by Benjamin Chairs, who was Florida's first millionaire plantation owner, slave owner. So they're bricks most likely made by slaves. Front entrance, this sign, those are actually granite blocks that were original steps. Recognize them too because it's the same type granite that we had when I worked at Fort Morgan. And this is the historical marker for the Powder Magazine. Of course, these are on the um, website for the historical marker database. Now we hold talks in there, history talks. There's museum exhibits. Check out their Facebook page to get more information on when it is open. It's usually open from like Wednesday to Saturday. And this is the inside hallway. They usually have exhibits set up here, this early picture. But the brickwork is absolutely beautiful here. And this is the original brickwork. Okay, this is still Gadsden County. The landing and the arsenal are Gadsden County. Well, east of Chattahoochee, kind of southeast, there's a town called Greensboro, and this is the house. It's the Dezel House, Dezell, and of course there's a historical marker too. But this is known as the West Gadsden County Historical Society. This house was owned by the local doctor. I think it was built in 1912. I just love the architecture about that time period, mainly because I grew up in a house that was built in the 1920s, very similar construction, glass doorknobs and windows that, with kind of wavy streaks in from where the glass was poured. So that's kind of neat. But they have amazing display inside. This is dates back to some Seminole War. There's an incident nearby known as the McLean Massacre. McLean. Uh, anyway, the woman Nancy McLean in 1840, Seminoles attacked her home when her husband was away and killed her and two children. And they killed the children with a lighter knot. And this is the lighter knot that they killed them with, the gun barrel. was owned by her teenage son who ran off and survived. And kind of interesting, you see underneath, let me see if I can get a close up. It's hard to show because of the glare from the light in the window. This is a pencil drawing by the son, John McLean, uh, of the Seminoles attacking the house and the barn in 1840. So that was in August 1840. It was on Tulogia Creek, Muskogee word for turkey. Just west of here, there's the Sycamore Church and Cemetery, where uh, was it Nancy Jane McLean shot and killed her two children, Catherine McLean, age 13, and two small children killed with pine knots. This is their grave right here. And in our cemetery not far away is her son, who died much later. He was in, of course, in the Confederate Army, the Florida Infantry, in the Civil War, John K. McLean, and this is his grave. So that's pretty cool. So that is some historical sites on the Seminole War Trail in Jackson and Gadsden County, Florida, that I'm going to call the Upper Apalachicola River. My next video, I'm going to talk about sites just south of there, the southern or lower Apalachicola area, which includes the fort at Prospect Bluff and Blountstown. Come around and visit for that. Thank you.